housing that was put together by the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Presenting for the department this morning is Susan Rafferty. Ms. Rafferty, you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to share my screen, so give me 1 second. All right, does that look good? Good. Okay. All right, good morning. My name is Susan Rafferty, and I am the Agency Policy Specialist for the Property Tax Division at the Department of Revenue. Today, I will briefly be going over the 4D Affordable Housing Report. The 4D Affordable Housing Report was produced in consultation with the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency and used data provided 4D classification to meet the needs of low to moderate income individuals and families in Minnesota. The report includes an overview and history of the 4D classification, the tax implications of this classification, the estimated impact of reducing the class rate, and stakeholder feedback. In order for a property or a unit within a property to be classified as 4D, it must meet certain statutory requirements. These include Minnesota Housing Finance Agency certification to the assessor. At least 20% of the units must meet the low-income housing requirement as defined by Minnesota Statute Section 273.128, which states the units must meet any of the following: receive housing assistance payments, are rent and income restricted, are financed for rental assistance by the federal government. Occupants' household income must not exceed 60% of the greater of area or state median income adjusted for family size. And rents for assisted units must not exceed 30% of 60% of the greater of area or state median income adjusted for family size. In a typical multifamily housing property, some individual units may qualify for the 4D classification, while the remainder of the property is classified as a whole, usually as 4A residential multifamily, which is typically like an apartment. There are two valuation tiers for qualifying 4D units. Units are valued individually, and the valuation tiers are applied on a per unit basis. The first $174,000 of value per unit receives a 0.75% class rate. Any value over $174,000 for a unit receives a reduced class rate of 0.25%. During the 2021 special legislative session, the valuation tier limit was lowered from the 2021 level of $174,000 to $100,000 for assessment years 2022 and 2023. It is estimated that 18% of Class 4D value currently in the first tier will qualify for the second tier under this change. In this table, you can see the breakdown of 4D units by year and how many of those units qualify for the second tier. And if they do qualify, what percent of their value falls under the second tier. In assessment year 2020, there were 2,149 multifamily residential properties in the state that had units that qualified for 4D classification. Of these properties, 449, or 21%, received funding from a local program to qualify units for 4D classification. Local programs range from programs that fund new construction to programs that help owners meet the criteria for providing low-income rental units. The table breaks down the number of 4D units for each funding type. Most of the units that receive some sort of local program funding fall under column 4. In assessment year 2020, just under 80,000 individual housing units received 4D classification. And preliminary data from assessment year 2021 shows the number of qualifying 4D units increasing by approximately 5% to 83,968. All 87 counties in Minnesota have 4D property. The Class 4D net tax capacity, or NTC, is less than 1% of the total tax base in 86 counties and is 1.2% in Ramsey County. However, 4D property represents more than 2% of the total tax base in 45 of the 405 cities that have 4D property. And for additional information regarding these cities, please check out the appendices to the report. In 2021, units receiving the 4D classification paid $75.5 million in property taxes. This table shows the taxes paid by 4D housing units and again is broken down by funding type. By classifying these properties as 4D rather than 4A multifamily residential housing, the properties paid 40% less in property taxes. The report also looks at the number of units in tax increment finance or TIF districts. There are currently 375 parcels that are in whole or in part classified as 4D and located in a TIF district. This represents 11% of all 4D parcels. Approximately half of all counties have some 4D parcels located in a TIF district. The 4D properties located in TIF districts paid approximately $13.4 million in TIF tax increment for payable year 2021. It is estimated that 4D properties would have paid an additional $10.3 million in tax increment if their classification was 4A multifamily residential housing rather than 4D low-income rental housing. Of that additional $10.3 million in tax increment, 84% of it would be for properties located in the 7-county metropolitan area. Any changes to the 4D class rate will impact the property's net tax capacity and their tax burden. If the 4D classification rate was changed to a single tier rate of 0.25%, it would reduce the statewide 4D net tax capacity from $35.5 million to $18.3 million. These reductions in tax base would lower the share of property taxes paid by 4D property, and that would mean that other property types, such as homesteads, would pay a higher share of property taxes in areas that contain the 4D property. The impact of a potential change to the 4D class rate on property taxes paid by homesteaded properties would vary between communities. The property tax burden on individual homestead properties is dependent on several factors, such as the mix of property types in the community. As the table shows, the average dollar change for a residential homestead net property tax would be $17 statewide, $25 in the 7-county metro area, and $8 in greater Minnesota. For additional information and detail, you can find the 4D Affordable Housing Report on the Department of Revenue website under Property Tax Reports or by searching 4D Legislative Report. I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions. Otherwise, I am very happy to email back amazing answers. That's all I have for my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Raverty. Just sort of members of the committee, in case you have not received the full report before, that has been emailed to you, and certainly as you look through that, if you have future questions, we can certainly get the answers to those for you. And at this point, I'm just double checking my computer, Ms. Raverty, if anyone has a question. Couple of points that I'd like to make or questions that I have. Does the department, and maybe it's not the Department of Revenue's job, it might be Department of Housing, or Minnesota Housing Finance, but do you know what the need for 4D housing is? Do you keep track of unmet need and that type of thing in that category?
Mr. Chair, we do not track that sort of thing, but I would guess that would be MHFA.
And I think we have members of the industry here, and they can probably comment on that also. And so, what is? And have you done in your study? Did you do anything as far as the impact on 4D projects as their viability due to the increased costs that they've experienced due to COVID? whether it, and quite frankly, probably even the civil unrest, as they've had to undertake additional security measures, et cetera, in the last couple of years?
Mr. Chair, no, we simply looked at the existing 4D properties and then projected like what we think it's going to be going forward.
And so, and then does the department or do locals provide some type of oversight as far as a type of audit that ensures that the percentage of low-income residency is met in these projects?
Mr. Chair, again, I think that would be a question for MHFA. That is not something that we track.
Okay, all right, very good. Members, are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Raverty. We do have a list of testifiers for that, and first on the list is Ward Innes, and Mr. Innes is in the room. If you would like to come forward. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Innes. Welcome. I'm on that. Everything I doing now? Okay.
There we go.
We slipped out of unmute. Okay. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Innes. Please identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ward Innes. I'm here on behalf of the 4D Coalition. The 4D Coalition is a group of 18 organizations, both for-profit and nonprofit, that do preservation of affordable housing and development of affordable housing. They coalesced around this issue about 4 years ago and really identified this. A consensus came among the industry players that the 4D tax burden was the #1 impediment to the preservation and the construction of additional affordable housing in Minnesota. So this group has grown, actually, I think, from 12 members originally to 18 members now. It's noteworthy that they've latched on to this as their top priority in order to build more affordable and preserve more affordable housing, and that they probably build and preserve 70 to 80% of the affordable housing units in the state of Minnesota. So these are the folks that are preserving the existing NOAA properties, moving dirt, building the affordable housing units here in Minnesota. So we've been working on this issue for 4 years. I really want to do a shout out to Senator, the chair. He's been a great champion on this issue. Really appreciate your continued leadership on this issue. We appreciate the progress that was made in 2021 by reducing the tier to $100,000 and freezing it there for 2 years. We view that as a triage, really, and maybe a stopgap measure until we can make further permanent tax reductions. And I'm really optimistic about this report, that I think it confirms what we already knew in the industry, but it provides some additional data sets, I think, that prove our case that we need to make more reductions in the 4D property tax classification. The current classification system is not working as it was intended to work. I want to thank Senator Rest and Senator Dietzick. I know you worked very closely with them, Chairman. This has been a bipartisan effort in the Senate. Senator Rest's leadership on this issue is really noteworthy because she was the original architect of the 4D classification. Back in 2005, when this was originally implemented, she was the chief author. And then in 2015, she was the architect of the 2-tier class. And I think if she was sitting here right now, she would acknowledge that the system, the classification is not working as she intended. And she's been working hard with you. I know Senator Weber and others on the committee to try to address this issue. We're hopeful that this report will lay the foundation for some additional progress in the 2022 session. I think it's maybe important to reiterate why the 4D classification came into being. These properties, even though they're rent restricted, they're rent restricted either 60% AMI to 30% AMI. So these are rent restricted properties that are certified every year by MHFA to make sure they're meeting the rent restrictions. So there is a very stringent a process where every year these properties have to go to MHFA and certify that they meet all the requirements of the program. If they miss that certification or somehow don't pass the certification, they are out of the program. So there are safeguards in place under the current system. But the 4D classification was put in place because these properties, even though they're rent restricted, and they are assessed as if they are market rate properties. So there's this fiction at the assessment level about how these properties are assessed. They don't take into account the rent rolls, the reduced rent rolls. They don't take into account the rent restrictions. They assess them as if they're normal market rate properties. So the legislature thought, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And so we're gonna try to compensate for that by giving them a reduced class rate. So that's how the 4D came into place. I think there's some really good data points in this report. Like I said before, I think it confirms what we already knew within the industry, but there's some really interesting things that basically shows that the two-tier system has failed in what it was intended to do. For example, only 2.8% of the 4D value in the entire state is getting the benefit of the lower second tier. 3%. So this has been in place since assessment year 2015, and only 3% of the valuation in the entire state of Minnesota is getting the benefit of the lower tier. I think the practical effect is that we have a single tier. It's 0.75. And none of that 0.25 property is in greater Minnesota. So it's probably concentrated in certain areas, maybe more desirable neighborhoods in the metropolitan area. But the 2.8% number just jumped out at me, that we essentially don't have a two-tier system. We have a single-tier system currently. I think also, I would say this is a very unique report, right, Senator? We've talked about this. This is a report that was done to analyze one very specific proposal, the one that we've been bringing forward for the last 4 years. What would happen if we reduced the rate to 0.25? I don't know of another report done by the Department of Revenue that was that kind of report, right? But I think it achieved its purpose. It provides more data sets for us to make an informed decision. This proposal was brought forward was supported by the cities, and they told us we needed the more granular, more robust data, more information, more analysis to make an informed decision. I think the department, to their credit, delivered on that. And so what you have in front of you, I think, is a really good document. I think it reinforces the need to address this issue. Another data point in the document is that there's 853 cities in Minnesota. 448 of them don't have any 4D property. And that's interesting on a couple of levels. It's interesting because it shows that we have an acute affordable housing crisis. If more than half the cities in the state of Minnesota don't have any rent-restricted properties or any 4D properties, that's an issue. And it probably shows how challenging it is to build these properties in some of the greater Minnesota areas. Of the 405 cities that do in fact have 4D properties, only 32 of those cities would see a reduction in their tax base greater than 2%. And that's a very small subset of the overall cities that have 4D property. There are ways that we've done in the past that can address those issues, and Senator Weber, you're well aware of them, transition aid, replacement aid, and we can target to these communities to provide a shock absorber if we reduce the class rate in these communities. So I think this reiterates the fact that the cities that are really impacted on this it's a very small subset of cities. We have tools that we've used in the past to address those concerns. Another really interesting point in the report is Ms. Rafferty talked about the impacts on individual households, right? $17 on an average valued home in Minnesota, $8 in greater Minnesota, $25 in the metropolitan area. I would say that overstates the impact a little bit because it does not take into account the property tax refund program. And the department did a really nice job of taking a few examples from some of these cities and showing what the property tax refund program, how it would react to these increases in property taxes, especially on lower and middle income folks. And it shows that our property tax refund program is extremely responsive to changes in property tax burden, especially for lower and middle income folks. And it shows like, people talked about the impacts in Black Duck. Looks like it was gonna be a 4% increase on a home. Well, you look at an example they use in here and they factor in the property tax refund and the increase is 1%. And the property tax increase is, extremely modest. And so I think it was very helpful, this report. One thing it did is that it did a deeper dive. You look at those runs that we look at, Chairman, and it shows at a very high level, but this did a deeper dive and said, what happens when the PTR kicks in? And it offsets, half of the increase that's showing up on these runs. So I think it also shined a really good light on our current PTR program And if this committee decides, well, maybe we need to, increase the PTR program a little bit to address some of these concerns, it is a great tool, and it really works very effectively at delivering property tax relief where it's needed. Another thing you probably heard before is the city's advocated for this study. I was a little disappointed in my friends in the city lobbyist community in their response to the study. Essentially, they if you look in their addendum, there's response from the League of Minnesotas and others, and basically they're asking for more analysis. We didn't do the right analysis. We need to do more economic analysis. We need, I think that's just a recipe for paralysis by analysis. We have what we need to make an informed decision. This was their study report that they requested, and the department did their job in completing it. Another thing I would say too is that the folks who work with the cities, work for the cities, that do housing, the housing experts have endorsed the 4D reforms. They've endorsed reducing the class rate to 0.25. There's an organization called NARO. Many of you probably aren't familiar with it, but it's the Minnesota chapter, National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officers. So these are the HRA directors. These are the people who run the housing divisions at cities and counties. They have endorsed this proposal to reduce it to 0.25. They work with us. They know these impediments that the property taxes have on the ability to build and preserve affordable housing. So next time the cities come and talk to you about this proposal, ask them where their HRA director is on this issue. Ask them where NIRO is, because there are plenty of folks within the cities who are working on building affordable housing that are supportive of the 4D reforms. I'm going to turn it over. We got some industry experts here on the people who are actually building the units. To your question, though, Chairman, about need, ask each one of them what the waiting lists are for their properties. Steve Min, who's going to be talking here shortly, he was in your office, I know, and you asked a question about vacancies. And he says he has a property in downtown Minneapolis where he has a 700-person waiting list. Paul Williams, who runs PPL, also said our waiting list is a mile long. The need is unbelievable, and this property tax burden is proving really an impediment for us doing what we can to put more roofs over people's heads. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Question, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Innes. Is there a list of 40 properties out there, like by county, so you could look at those somewhere on the website, or where would you find the list of properties by county or across the state?
Chairman, Senator Jasinski, yeah, great question. There's an addendum in the report that was put together. I think that was one of the benefits of this report. It shows not only that there's 7,000 units, individual units of affordable housing, it also shows where those are, what counties they're in. So I think there's a list. I know there's a list by county in there. I think there's also a list of cities that have greater than maybe 1% of their tax base in 4D. So that was one of the great things. The department was able to inventory by reaching out to the counties about how many properties you have in your jurisdiction, where they are. That's where I got the numbers that, 448 cities don't even have any 4D properties, right? And I think every county has some, obviously, but it really does range. It really does range. And it's, the information is there. It's in the 4D report.
And just to follow up, sorry, Mr. Chair, is there an address though? So if I wanted to look in Rice County, what are all the properties by address that are in there, or Steele County or Waseca County? Is that out there somewhere or not?
Right. Chairman, Senator Jasinski, it is, I think, out there somewhere. MHFA might have that, because they have to certify each one of these units every year. So they may have, I remember them sending me some very voluminous documents a couple years ago when I started working on this. So they actually might have that. So if you were precise in what cities you wanted, I think they could provide you all that address information, I expect.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, then thank you, Mr. Innes.
Thank you,
and
Chairman.
We'll see what other questions may develop here. Next, we're going to go to Scott Cordes, Project Pride and Living, the CFO. Mr. Cordes is joining us via computer, and looking for him on my computer right now. There you are. Welcome, Mr. Cordes. Please identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Mr. Chair, members, good morning. I'm Scott Cordes, Chief Financial Officer at Project for Pride and Living. PPL is an affordable housing and career readiness nonprofit based in the Twin Cities, where we develop, own, operate, and provide services to over 1,600 units across the Twin Cities. Over 3,000 people live with us every day. Over 80% come from communities of color. race equity and disparity reduction is absolutely baked into our mission, into our strategic plan, and is core to how we do business every day. Prior to arriving at PPL, I also served as budget director in the city of St. Paul. So I've had the unique opportunity to sit at multiple sides of this table and appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective with you this morning. So as an operator of affordable housing, I can tell you that our margins have always been narrow by design. It's a way for us to continue to provide quality affordable housing while keeping rents affordable. However, recent growth in cost drivers, as has been noted earlier, has changed our cost structure really significantly over the last several years, most notably in our property tax expenses. It's making it increasingly difficult to operate affordable housing in a way that preserves the dignity of our residents and continues to allow us to provide high quality housing to those residents. Since 2016, property tax expenses at PPL on average have been growing by over 10% annually. And our four biggest cost drivers, property taxes, insurance, utilities, and safety and security of our buildings and our residents, have collectively grown more than double the rate of inflation during that time. Over the last 2 years, PPL properties have carried annual deficits of $1.1 million and $1.2 million respectively. Obviously, that this isn't sustainable over the long term, and is something that we're looking to address to make sure that we can provide the services, maintenance, and capital improvements that our residents need. The 4D reform legislation, lowering the class rate to 0.25% would provide an estimated $1 million in relief to our organization. This gets us closer to break even and helps us stop treading water in the near term. Controlling operating costs are critical to ensure we can preserve our existing housing stock. And as some of my colleagues who follow here today will share, it helps to ensure the viability of new affordable housing as well, and to make sure that those projects can pencil out. Our legislative agenda, as Ward mentioned earlier, our legislative agenda this year includes many issues that are important to addressing affordable housing needs in our community. This is the single most important issue to our organization as we think about what's in front of us this year and the long-term viability of affordable housing in our broader industry. The good news, as was also mentioned earlier, is this investment comes at a manageable cost to both state and local governments. The Department of Revenue report reinforces 4D reform legislation is an extremely cost-effective way to support affordable housing. Costs to the state budget are minimal, and there's no direct impact to local government budgets themselves. The burden at the local level, as Ms. Raverty talked about, comes in the form of property tax shifts from affordable housing properties to all other property types, commercial, industrial, other multifamily market rate housing, single family homesteads, et cetera. From my time in local government, I know firsthand property tax burdens shift between different property types every year simply due to differential changes in property tax valuations. These shifts are normal, they're inherent in our system, the property tax system in the state of Minnesota, and they happen every single year before taking into account any changes in property tax levies. For a quick example that highlights, the report highlights my former employer, the city of St. Paul, as one of the examples, who has a relatively high percentage of affordable properties within their tax base, and therefore their shift is larger than most. The DOR report projects a tax shift to the typical St. Paul home of 1.8% as a result of this legislation. I did a little bit of analysis for context for taxes payable in 2021. The natural tax shift to a typical home in St. Paul resulting from annually adjusted value changes that this year was 4.6%. This is before any local decisions about levy changes are factored in. I don't want to unduly minimize the impact of tax shifts. They're important consideration in the broader picture, but I also want to reinforce that shifts aren't unusual. And as the report lays out, there's tools available to mitigate the impact of these shifts, particularly to lower income homeowners. In closing, the bottom line property tax relief provided by this legislation is $48 million in new annual investment into affordable housing statewide. This is a significant and impactful infusion of resources that will help preserve existing high-quality affordable housing and continue to incentivize future affordable development, and it does so with minimal impact to state and local budgets. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cordes. Question is, your organization, how many units of new construction are you participating in currently or within the past couple of years?
Mr. Chair, members, our goal every year is to produce in the range of 100 to 150 new units every year. And that's been our pattern for the last several years.
Okay. And what are you seeing as far as the increase in cost of construction in order to provide those units?
So, Mr. Chair, costs are obviously increasing significantly. Mr. Min, who's going to be testifying later, will have some more specific examples on that. But again, this past year, the cost of housing increased rapidly. We've seen costs change, again, depending on the type of unit, from $225,000 to $250,000 per unit. Now, most of our projects are in the $300,000 plus per unit range.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, members? Okay. Very good. Thank you. Next, we will turn to Libby Murphy from Minnesota Housing Partnership. Ms. Murphy?
Thank you, Chair Weber and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today on the importance of reducing property taxes to support affordable housing providers and increase the number of affordable homes. My name is Libby Murphy. I'm the Director of Policy at Minnesota Housing Partnership. MHP is a 30-year nonprofit organization. MHP's policy work is focused on supporting solutions and investments that efficiently and equitably increase the supply of affordable homes, preserve existing homes, improve the condition of home, and expand choice and opportunity to Minnesota's lowest income households. Our policy is informed by our original research on statewide housing issues, like our State of the State of Housing report, convening of diverse partners and stakeholders. We bring together nonprofit, for-profit, and government sectors to work together to ensure everyone has a safe, quality home. And our expertise in rural and tribal community development. In our 30 years, we have conducted more than 250 technical assistance assignments in the state, and our national work has taken us throughout the country. Lowering the tax rate on Class 4D units is among one of the most cost-effective and efficient tools that targets multiple public policy goals, including incentivizing landlords to provide affordable rental homes, maximizing private resources by leveraging more private debt to build more homes, and enhancing the quality of existing homes by freeing up resources so housing providers can invest in their residents. Regardless of how you think we got here, almost everyone can acknowledge that Minnesota has an affordable housing crisis. We are losing affordable homes at a faster rate than we are producing new homes. The gap between the rents that low-income Minnesotans can afford and what the market is providing is growing, because rent continues to increase disproportionately to income. Between 2000 and 2019, the median renter income in Minnesota increased by just 1%, while the median gross rent for the state increased by 14%. And we expect this gap to increase even more as inflation rises, because rents are one of the first and most major household expenses to increase with inflation. As a result, 2,680,764 Minnesotan renters, or 43% of renter households, are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing. And 130,332 renters, or 22% of all renter households, are severe cost burden, meaning they are paying more than half of their income on housing. Renter cost burden has increased significantly since 2000, when 35% of renters experienced cost burden in the state. And again, today that's up to 43% of renter households experiencing cost burden. And households of color are disproportionately impacted by the shortage of housing and the cost of housing. 58% of Black renters are cost burdened as compared to 44% of white renters. According to MHP's 2021 State of the State of Housing report, most of the workers in the top occupation are paying hundreds more per month on rent than they can afford. That's per month. And I think that's important to think about when we think about this, the discussion about shifts onto homeowners and other taxpayers, just how cost burdened Minnesotans are right now. This is just a random example I pulled. I'm not trying to pick on any one city, but MHP provides renter profiles. And in the city of Golden Valley in 2018, the average rent was $1,231, where the median renter income could afford to pay $982. So the half of all renters were possibly paying more than $249 per month. And so that's thousands of dollars more than they can afford on an annual basis. As housing is the single greatest expense in Minnesotans' budgets, any tool that helps housing providers provide lower than market rate rents and increase the supply of housing is a no-brainer. 4D is an existing tool that policymakers value. I applaud the committee for carefully assessing the program, and I urge you to simplify the program by eliminating the tiered rate structure and implement a 0.25 rate to enable the 4D program to work as intended in today's market conditions. Failure to address rising property taxes and the strain it is causing affordable housing has consequences. Once affordability is lost, the cost of replacing an affordable unit to local governments will be greater than the small shift as a result of this proposal. We are leaving significant resources on the table to avoid a nominal shift in the tax base. The benefits of maximizing private equity to provide more homes and expand access and opportunity outweigh these nominal shifts. Lastly, low-income renters, and most importantly, low-income renters are the most financially stressed housed Minnesotans. These households are disproportionately female head of households and from communities of color. Without incentives to participate in the 4D program, landlords have no incentive to provide rent relief in the form of rent restrictions. Rather than enroll new units and supply more rent-restricted homes, cost burden and displacement will escalate. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Ms. Murphy, have you noticed any type of, and it might be a little soon to analyze this, but with proposed rent control in St. Paul, have you started to see a greater number of people that all of a sudden are being forced from a market rent situation into having to go to rental assistance just because of the type of increases we're seeing before that rule takes effect?
I am not able to answer that question. That is not something that we've looked at yet.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Murphy. Next, we will turn to Chris Sherman, Sherman Associates. Welcome, Mr. Sherman. Please identify yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Weber and members of the committee. I am Chris Sherman, president of Sherman Associates. Sherman Associates is a owner, operator, and developer of affordable housing communities across the Midwest, but our backyard, our home base is the Twin Cities, is Minnesota. For the last 40 plus years, we have developed, owned, and operate affordable housing communities across the state of Minnesota, in particular in the Twin Cities. We own and operate right now about 4,000 affordable housing units in the state of Minnesota. And over the last 10 years, we have seen a variety of factors that have greatly impacted our ability to both preserve and produce new affordable housing. Rising expenses, rising costs on the construction side, and then of course the rising real estate tax expense that continues to impact our ability to both build new and preserve existing. I want to speak to both of those. The 4D tax rate, a reduction would certainly be beneficial to new production. That is something I'll speak to here in a second, but the impact it'll have on preservation is much more substantial. You heard some of the numbers earlier. We right now have 84,000 4D tax rate units across the state of Minnesota. You heard just prior to me that there's 268,000 cost burdened households right now in the state of Minnesota. So that really gives a good figure for what that gap is. We have a significant, very drastic shortage of affordable housing across the state of Minnesota in every city. So it's a significant problem. In the 4D tax rate, from our perspective, our company's perspective, is the number one tool in the toolbox that we can utilize to help close the gap. It is a very efficient tool to be able to use from a financing standpoint. We leverage up a lot of private financing to preserve and produce new affordable housing. And to be able to have a lower tax rate, a reduction from 0.75 to 0.25 in all values, allows us to utilize that cost savings often over a 40-year amortization period with our lenders, whether it's HUD, banks, Fannie, Freddie. We can finance that over an extended period to leverage up more private financing on the debt side, but also utilize it to bring in more federal resources as well to the state of Minnesota in the form of the federal low-income housing tax credit for new production and preservation. So there are significant beneficial outcomes from an underwriting standpoint for both preservation and production. On the preservation side, over the last 10 years, we have lost thousands of units of naturally occurring affordable housing due to the rising costs of maintaining and preserving it as affordable housing. Buyers look at really what is the best value outcome when they're coming in to acquire a potential asset. Us and many others are looking to acquire existing naturally occurring and existing tax credit affordable communities, but often are outbid by buyers that come in and run the numbers and say, well, due to rising expenses, due to the ability and need to increase rents, what makes the most financial sense is to buy this as a market rate property and convert it from NOAA to market rate and do the improvements and raise the rents. And that's what we've seen a lot of across the state the last 10 years. And we've lost thousands upon thousands of naturally occurring affordable housing units. The 4D tax rate will and could have, but will make a substantial impact on that ability to really convert to market rate. It's going to allow groups on the nonprofit and for-profit side to compete more actively, more readily to preserve and reposition these naturally occurring affordable housing properties for the long term. And I do want to really highlight the fact that reduction in the 4D tax rate from 0.75 to 0.25. Well, it does allow us to preserve and produce more. It also allows us to maintain. It also allows us to maintain a much healthier stock of affordable housing, a much better maintained stock of affordable housing, as we have more resources and more competition in the marketplace to maintain these properties at the highest level. The 84,000 units that are right now designated as 4D are largely very high quality operations, very high quality properties. You heard earlier that a majority of the groups that own and operate these properties are part of this 4D coalition. And both on the nonprofit and for-profit side here in Minnesota, we have just a tremendous depth of knowledge and expertise when it comes to operating affordable housing. So I think as we look at ways we can increase the number of affordable housing units in our state to meet the growing demand for affordable housing, the 268,000 households that are cost burdened, the 4D tax rate is the number one tool in our toolbox. And a reduction in the 4D tax rate, well, it does have shifts today in the tax base. Long term for the state, and certainly for I would say a majority of cities, it's going to be a cost savings for the taxpayer. Right now, whether it's Minneapolis or St. Paul or so many other cities that have affordable housing trust funds, those trust funds and at the state level, the affordable housing resources at the state level are, as a result of our crisis, much more substantive than they likely need to be long term, because we do have a crisis in affordable housing. And if we can utilize the 4D tax rate, a reduction in it, to help close the gap on affordable housing for the long term, we will see long term the need for those trust funds diminish. Not completely. They'll always be needed, but right now we're seeing them escalate and escalate. And the reason they're escalating is because the cost to build new is much more expensive than the cost to preserve. Now, I just got one final statement here. The cost, if you assume from the city and state level that the average unit of affordable housing from a new production standpoint costs $50,000 of city and state subsidy, and that's probably being conservative. If we're building 1,000 units of new affordable housing, that's $50 million. And 1,000 units of new affordable housing in the state of Minnesota is just a small fraction of what's needed. And that's $50 million a year. And what we're considering here with the reduction in the 4D tax rate is just a very small fraction of that. Preservation and production using a lower 4D tax rate long-term will save the state dollars and will save local municipalities money as well. So there are long-term impacts to offset these short-term shifts that will occur, but long-term, I think the payback to our state, to our cities is just tremendous. And it allows us to provide higher quality housing for the growing number of households that are cost burdened. So we are a tremendous supporter of this reduction. I thank you for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Questions, anyone? Let's turn on to then Mr. Steve Min from Lupe Development. Mr. Min, please identify yourself and proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee as well. My name is Steve Min. I'm the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Lupe Development Partners. We are a for-profit developer for the last 35 years, working in both market rate and affordable housing. 75% of our housing production is actually affordable. We own roughly 1,500 units. We produce roughly 100 to 200 units a year of both market rate and affordable, and we have commitments in the pipeline right now for roughly 400 units of affordable housing over the next 2.5 years. The coalition before you of nonprofit and for-profit developers share a common development cost, common operating expense, and common capital need. There's not much difference between nonprofit and for-profit when it comes to building these projects. This is why our coalition has such a unified voice in the need for 4D reform. I won't repeat all the data that my colleagues have shared with you, but let me give you some summary data that I think will be useful in your analysis. Metropolitan Council research shows that we need 40,000 new housing units between now and the end of the decade to meet our population demand, of which 25%, 10,000 units, must be affordable. Yet in the last 7 years, we've actually lost 15,000 naturally occurring affordable housing units, as Mr. Sherman articulated. These are units that are built in the 60s or the 70s, have reached the end of their useful life, and investors have come in and purchased them, renovated them, and raised the rents. And this is the loss that we will never get past if we don't solve for the housing crisis that we have. Now, new affordable projects typically have three elements of funding. Private debt based on operating income typically makes up 50% of the cost of developing new affordable housing. Federal tax credits, which the state just passes on to developers like Mr. Sherman, myself, the Common Bond, Aon, PPL, we all get the same tax credits. Those credits make up roughly 25% of the cost of developing new housing. The remaining 25% has traditionally been local or state grants or subsidies, including TIF. Now, the trend in escalation in operating expense make new projects less able to leverage private debt and more dependent upon state and local grants. Mr. Sherman just articulated that. Recently, in a project I've completed, I needed over 30% local and state grants rather than 25% because the debt leverage was lower because the tax costs were so much higher. And now those operating margins continue to escalate, and they're primarily directed to taxation increases. The trend is to have less private debt and more cost, and that, as Mr. Sherman articulated, I'll confirm, will just mean there's going to be more state subsidies and more local city subsidies needed to produce housing. Now, despite record amounts of bond allocation from the last two legislative sessions, the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency only funds roughly 25 or 30 projects a year, or roughly 2,500 units of new affordable housing throughout the state. At that rate of production, we will never build our way out of a housing crisis. We need to leverage more private investment. Now, back in 2015, when the tax code changed in 4D and we had the split rate, it cost my firm roughly $165,000 a unit to build affordable housing. Pre-pandemic, I was spending $230,000 a unit. That's a 33% cost increase. Within the last 18 months, because of the pandemic and material shortage supplies, I'm now spending $250,000 a unit. That is a 52% increase in housing production cost in just 7 years. In parallel, back in 2015, I developed a 150-unit affordable housing project in downtown Minneapolis. Mr. Chairman, I think I shared this with you a couple of weeks ago. When we first underwrote the project, it was projected to pay $1,200 a year per unit in taxes, or $180,000 for the whole project. Today, that project is taxed at $2,135 a unit, or $320,000 a year in taxes. That is a 78% increase in property taxes in just 7 years. That is not sustainable. Our rents have increased by contract with the federal and state government and local municipalities on an average about 2% a year in that same period. Not surprisingly, that particular property, which is sort of the pearl in my portfolio, has had 2 periods of debt forbearance with my lender during the pandemic. We just simply don't have enough cash flow to even pay our debt. Now, that's a temporary situation, but it shows you how thin our margins are to begin with and how susceptible we are to tax increases operating our bottom line. I would say 4D is the state's most effective housing policy change because it serves both preservation and the production need. I think my colleagues have articulated both the operating and production side before me, but the incentive to existing owners of naturally occurring affordable housing to remain serving that community is much more likely to happen if their operating millennial issue here is to operate in a much more reasonable tax environment. And the incentive to have operating costs at 38 to 42% instead of 55 to 60% operating costs is what's driving the conversion of NOAA properties to market rate. Now, in the last few sessions, we have heard from your colleagues in the House that they're concerned that this is somehow a windfall to operators, both nonprofit and for-profit, would somehow benefit from this, and it would not remain invested in the properties. I want to assure, Mr. Chairman, you and the committee that that is not the case. So I would like to offer a few suggestions about that. The 4D program has been in existence with MHFA oversight for over a decade, actually almost 15 years. Annual certifications are required. Annual audits are available for all of us who have done housing tax credit projects. We're required to have audits, and those are available for inspection by any unit of government by contract. We have to provide that information. And the rate of non-performance in this 4D program is less than 1% over the last 15 years. People just do not fail. Once they're in the program, they observe their agreements. That's the way the industry operates. But I'd like to offer you some suggestions on how the legislation before you might be altered so the concerns that have been raised by those who don't quite understand our industry could feel comforted that this is the money that we're going to save in taxation is going to stay in the properties. You know, I'll go through 4 items that you might consider. Properties participating in the 4D program should visibly and publicly post in plain language notice to all residents that we're participating in this program and that assistance is being provided by a tax subsidy and that adjustments for rents are per a contract, and that if there's a concern or someone thinks that the rents are unfair or haven't been followed per our commitments, that they can report by a phone number or an email address to the agency to inquire as to whether or not we're following our program. Annual certifications to the housing agency to obtain 4D status should include a statement from every property owner that we are following our land use restriction code. It's abbreviated LURA, L-U-R-A. That's a term in our industry where we all sign a contract to restrict rents on the property, and those restrictions are recorded against our properties as deed restrictions. And so we should certify that we're complying every year. Properties that fail to comply with the rent limits established by that contract should lose their 4D tax status. We don't want bad actors in our industry. And until those offending properties get back into conformance for at least 12 months, they should not have their 4D status. That's a significant penalty that would be a cudgel to encouraging the less than 1% failure that we have as an industry. And finally, I would say that MHFA should have the authority to deny admission to the 4D program. I think they do already. False or fraudulent certification to obtain 4D status should be punishable by loss of the 4D status. And frankly, it's available as a referral for a criminal action to the Attorney General, and that should be what should happen. Mr. Chairman, that'll conclude my remarks. I'm happy to stand for questions if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Min. Yeah, I think for the thoroughness of your report, actually, you answered any questions that I was going to ask. Members, are there any further questions on your part? Very good. Thank you, sir. And then our final scheduled testifier is Cecile Bador from Common Bond. Ms. Bador, please proceed when you are ready.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to participate this morning.
and your sincere thanks for your thoughtful consideration of this really important bill. Again, my name is Cecile Bedore, and I serve as the Executive Vice President of Real Estate for Common Bond Communities. Like PPL, we're a nonprofit affordable housing developer, property manager, and service provider. We're based in St. Paul and celebrating our 50th anniversary of service. While our service area does include Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Rapid City in South Dakota, the vast majority of our housing communities are in Minnesota, where we currently serve over 10,000 people, including, for example, seniors and families and veterans throughout 57 cities in suburban, urban, and rural communities in both greater Minnesota and the metro area. From our organization standpoint, where operating challenges at common bond properties really mirror those noted earlier by Mr. Cordes, and my previous professional experience as the Planning and Economic Development Director for the City of St. Paul, as well as the Executive Vice President for Greater MSP, where housing affordability was highlighted as an issue by business owners. This bill is really vital to preserving existing affordable housing units in Minnesota, as well as advancing the construction of new units. I think, as I said, this bill can also provide that tool to fuel the creation. It would allow nonprofit providers like us and PPL, for others, as well as for-profit developers to leverage additional net operating income realized through the reduction in property tax, such that we could increase the amount of mortgage proceeds, for example, and hopefully reduce our requests to organizations like Minnesota Housing and others. Without the bill, however, new affordable housing construction will continue to be increasingly difficult to undertake and increase the need for more public dollars to fill the financing gap to construct and operate housing. And many existing affordable housing properties may not be able to meet their operating expenses and debt obligations. Similar to PPL, Common Bond has been feeding our properties significantly over the last 24 months in particular. And in order for us to do that, we need to go fundraise to provide that level of support. I think it's also really important to underscore that operating costs of an affordable housing property versus market rate housing is really similar. We, for example, do not receive discounts on insurance and utilities and maintenance costs. We are not immune to the labor shortages that we're seeing across our country, and thus we're not immune to the increase in those labor costs. We also have operating expenses that market rate operators do not. The compliance paperwork, for example, that Mr. Min just mentioned, all the verifications, et cetera, required by our lenders and investors, including the state of Minnesota, is really significant. And it requires us to more heavily staff our sites. And frankly, we have to staff an entire compliance department simply to prepare and submit and monitor reams of documents related to compliance. And Chair Rebler, you're correct. You noted earlier, you had a question earlier about COVID, and COVID did pose significant operating challenges for us in terms of rent collections and staffing and security. And raising rents is obviously not an option covering these increases as it is, for example, with market rate operators. I'll just leave you with one example of the burden that the current system now poses on our operating costs related to property taxes, which illustrates the valuation challenge that Mr. Ward discussed earlier this morning. For our 11 properties in St. Paul, for example, valuations increased by 57% from 2016 to 2020. As a result, property taxes increased by 20% from 2018 to 2020, and that amounted to an additional $222,000 in taxes in that time period. That was an increase from $943 per unit in property taxes to $1,130. The 4D proposal that's before you today would save us around $750,000 a year. That is significant, and that will have a significant impact on our ability to operate and maintain a significant portfolio that we currently own, as well as to continue to develop additional housing to meet the growing need. So again, the fix proposed by this bill will ensure that this policy tool is as powerful as it was intended and really will help ensure the preservation and expansion of Minnesota's housing stock. I really, again, appreciate the time with you this morning and your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bedore. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Bedore or any of the testifiers that have been before us today? Senator Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the testifiers about this important proposal. A couple of things that stood out to me in the report that was first presented. One was that, we've been concerned that changing this rate across the board would cause a significant shift onto residential properties. But as was demonstrated, those dollar amounts for individual residential properties were quite low statewide, between $8 and $25 for the average household. And so I found that reassuring. I was grateful that Mr. Ines pointed out that certain communities, up to 30 communities, might have a much higher impact because of their concentration of 4D properties. And I was intrigued by the idea of some sort of soften the blow legislation or amendment for those particular communities. I think that would be a good step going forward. I guess if I have a question, it might be for Mr. Min, who had made some prudent suggestions about how to reassure some concerns about abuse of this particular tax classification and so forth, and mentioned, specifically suggestions around ensuring that people complied with rent restrictions and so forth. Are there currently in place, or would you be interested in also guardrails around ensuring, that there's maintenance and responsiveness of these properties, that there's upkeep, that they are high quality and safe and compliance with codes and so forth, something that ensures that type of quality metric as well.
Mr. Min?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Klein, I think those are interesting ideas that probably could be addressed. Let me offer you some information about how we operate generally that may assuage some of your concerns, but I would say typically we are inspected 3 times a year already. The first inspection is usually by the lender. The second inspection is usually by the tax credit investor. And then the third is usually a local municipality looking to verify that our units have complied with the compliance that Ms. Bador was speaking to. That's both a lease review and a property inspection. There's actually a scored report as part of that inspection. They look at roughly 10% of the units every year. Sometimes it's more if the property is on the watch list. And those violations of code are reported to the investor and the syndicator, and usually to the local unit of government that's responsible for our tax credits. It could be the state or it could be the city. So I'll just say that those inspections already occur. There is no doubt any of the operators will invest the money in our properties. We have a requirement for funding our reserves, and these are the funds that are not getting funded lately because of the operating expense deficit. But I would say our contracts require us to fund the reserves to operate the properties by contract from surplus cash before we can take any distributions. So if that gives you some comfort, I'll tell you that those typically those obligations are in place. If you wanted to add additional language to the guardrails, then you'd probably have to tie in some kind of an inspection mechanism or a certification. And I think most of the operators would agree to a certification. We do that already.
Senator Klein? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Min. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, excuse me, Mr. Sylvia. I'm not used to looking all the way around the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I just wanted to answer an earlier question posed by Senator Jasinski and whether any document exists that indicate which properties by city or county qualify for the 4D report. There does exist on the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency's website an assessor report that I can download and forward to members that does list all the properties by county, city, address, parcel ID, the total units in the property, and the qualifying percent. So that document does exist, and I can provide that to members.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sylvia. Just so the members are aware, I do intend for there to be further discussion with a bill concerning the tax rate issue on 4D housing. And so think about your questions, think about the issues that have been brought up today, and that will be dealt with further here going down the road. With that, seeing no other questions, I will now declare this hearing adjourned.